Standing at gate A12 inches Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, I held 5 boarding passes in my hand. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating 200 passengers waiting for Hawaiian Airlines Flight 447 to Honolulu. I was 32 years old, a software engineer, and I had just spent 3 months saving $15,000 for this trip. It was supposed to be a celebration of my parents' 35th wedding anniversary. My sister Amanda suddenly stepped in front of me, her face twisted with rage. She screamed that I had ruined everything by booking cheap seats. Then she slapped me hard across the face. The sound echoed through the terminal. Everyone stared. My parents, Roger and Linda, immediately turned on me, calling me selfish and inconsiderate. I said nothing. I walked calmly to the ticket counter and quietly canceled 4 tickets. I kept only mine. The gate area emptied as passengers boarded the plane. I stood there alone, my cheek still burning from the slap, holding a single boarding pass with my name on it. The airline staff gave me sympathetic looks but said nothing. My phone started buzzing in my pocket, but I ignored it. I needed to think about how I had gotten to this moment. 3 months earlier, I had been sitting in my apartment in the Fremont neighborhood, scrolling through my banking app after receiving my annual bonus. I worked for a mid-sized tech company downtown, and the bonus had been generous that year. As I looked at the numbers, I thought about my parents. 35 years of marriage. They had raised me and Amanda in a small house in Tacoma, working hard to give us everything they could. My father had been a mechanic, my mother a school secretary. They deserved something special. I started researching Hawaii trips that night. I compared resorts, read reviews, calculated costs. I wanted it to be perfect. Premium economy seats on Hawaiian Airlines. Not first class, but definitely comfortable. A 4-night stay at a beautiful resort in Maui with ocean views, rental car, restaurant reservations, activities like snorkeling and a sunset dinner cruise. I put together a complete itinerary. Growing up, I had always been the responsible one. While Amanda drifted through high school with average grades and big dreams, I studied hard, earned scholarships, and worked 2 jobs to pay my way through the University of Washington. I graduated with a degree in computer science and landed a good job within 3 months. Amanda, on the other hand, had enrolled in community college twice and dropped out both times. My parents paid her tuition each time. She was 28 now, and still living in their house rent-free. The pattern had always been there. I just had not wanted to see it. When Amanda needed money for a car down payment, I lent her $3,000. She never paid it back. When she wanted to start a photography business that failed within 6 months, I helped her buy equipment, another $2,000, never repaid. My parents always praised me for being such a good brother, but they never asked Amanda to take responsibility. I booked the Hawaii trip anyway. I wanted to believe that this grand gesture would finally show my parents that I cared, that I was valuable to this family beyond just being the stable, reliable one who fixed problems and lent money. I chose May for the trip, a month with good weather and lower tourist crowds. I reserved a 2-bedroom suite at the resort so my parents could have privacy, while Amanda and I would each have our own beds in the second room. 2 weeks before the trip, I told everyone about it over Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I handed them printed itineraries in nice folders. My mother cried and hugged me. My father shook my hand firmly and said he was proud. Amanda flipped through the folder with a frown, then asked why I had not booked first-class seats. I explained that premium economy was comfortable, and the price difference would have been $4,000 more. Money I thought would be better spent on activities and nice dinners. She rolled her eyes and said I was always cheap. My mother laughed it off as Amanda being Amanda. My father said the seats would be fine, but Amanda kept bringing it up over the next 2 weeks. She sent me texts asking if it was too late to upgrade. She called me at work to complain that her friends always flew first class to Hawaii. She posted on social media about how she was going to Hawaii but wished the flights were nicer. I ignored most of it. I was used to Amanda's complaints. She had always been demanding, always wanted more, always made everything about her. What I did not expect was the airport meltdown. That morning, we all met at the departures level at 5:30. The flight was at 7:15. I had all the boarding passes on my phone and had printed backup copies. As we checked our luggage, Amanda started in again about the seats. She had apparently looked up the flight configuration online and saw that first class had lie-flat seats. She loudly announced to the baggage handler that her brother was too cheap to upgrade the family. My mother told her to stop complaining. My father said we should just be grateful for the trip, but Amanda would not let it go. As we walked to security, she kept making comments. By the time we reached the gate, she was in a full rage. She accused me of deliberately humiliating the family by booking inferior seats. She said I always did things halfway, never committed fully to anything. That was when she slapped me. Right there, in front of everyone. The smack was so loud that conversations stopped. Parents with small children stared. Business travelers looked up from their phones. A gate agent started walking toward us. My face stung, and I felt heat rising to my cheeks, not just from the slap, but from the humiliation. I waited for my parents to defend me, to tell Amanda she had crossed a line. Instead, my mother said I should have discussed the seating arrangements with everyone before booking. My father said I needed to be more considerate of what people wanted. Amanda stood there with her arms crossed, vindicated. Something inside me snapped. Not in an angry, explosive way, in a quiet, clear way. I turned and walked to the ticket counter. The agent, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, asked if I was okay. I told her I needed to make changes to my reservation. She pulled up my confirmation number. I asked her to cancel 4 of the 5 tickets and keep only mine. She looked confused and asked if I was sure. I said I had never been more sure of anything. She processed the cancellation. The tickets were non-refundable, but the airline issued credits to my account for future travel. $12,000 in credits, just like that. She handed me my new boarding pass for a single passenger. I thanked her and walked back to the gate area. My family was already in line to board. They had not even noticed I was gone. I sat down in a chair far from the boarding line and watched them shuffle forward with their carry-on bags. My phone started ringing. My mother's name flashed on the screen, then my father's, then Amanda's. I let them all go to voicemail. Over the airport PA system, a calm voice announced that 4 passengers had been removed from Flight 447 to Honolulu due to ticketing issues. I watched as a gate agent called my parents and Amanda to the side. I saw the confusion on their faces, then the shock, then the anger. My mother started gesturing wildly. Amanda was shouting, though I could not hear what she was saying from where I sat. My phone exploded with notifications, text after text, call after call. I looked at the voicemail icon. 7 new messages. I played the first one. My mother's voice, shrill and furious, screaming that I was cruel and vindictive, that I had ruined everything, that she could not believe I would do this to my own family. The second voicemail was Amanda, her voice dripping with venom, calling me names I will not repeat, threatening to make me pay for this humiliation. The third voicemail was my father. His voice was cold, disappointed, measured. He said he expected better from me, that this was childish and petty, that I had embarrassed them in public. Not one of them asked why I had done it. Not one of them acknowledged the slap or their immediate defense of Amanda. Not one of them apologized. I deleted the voicemails. I blocked their numbers temporarily, just for the day. I needed peace. The gate agent called my boarding group. I stood up, grabbed my backpack, and walked to the line. As I handed over my boarding pass, I glanced back one more time. My family was still at the counter, arguing with staff. My mother was crying. Amanda was yelling. My father had his head in his hands. I boarded the plane, found my premium economy seat with extra legroom, and sat down by the window. As the plane pushed back from the gate, I looked out at the Seattle skyline. The weight I had been carrying for 32 years began to lift. I did not know what would happen next. I did not know if my family would ever forgive me, but for the first time in my life, I had chosen myself, and it felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. The flight to Honolulu took 5.5 hours. I spent most of it staring out the window, watching the ocean stretch endlessly below. The flight attendants were kind. One of them, Noticing I was traveling alone in seats clearly meant for a group, asked if I was okay. I told her I was better than okay. She smiled knowingly and brought me extra snacks. When we landed at Honolulu International Airport, the warm Hawaiian air hit me as I stepped off the plane. I collected my luggage, rented the car I had reserved, and drove the scenic route to Maui, taking a short inter-island flight and then picking up another rental car. By early evening, I was checking into the resort. The woman at the front desk looked at my reservation and frowned slightly. She asked if the rest of my party would be arriving later. I told her it would just be me. She nodded professionally and handed me 2 key cards for the ocean view suite. The room was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific, a massive king bed, a separate living area, a bathroom with a soaking tub. It was meant for a family celebration. Now it was just mine. The first night was lonely. I ordered room service and ate on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. I thought about calling my family, unblocking their numbers, trying to explain. But every time I reached for my phone, I remembered my mother's face at the airport, not concern for me, anger at me. I put the phone down. The next morning, I woke early and went to the resort pool. It was barely 7, and only a few people were there. I found a lounge chair, ordered coffee from a poolside attendant, and tried to read a book on my phone, but I could not focus. I kept replaying the airport scene, the slap, the accusations, the cancellation, the looks on their faces. That was when I noticed her. A woman about my age, maybe 30, sitting at the other end of the pool with a book in her hands. She had dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and was wearing a simple blue swimsuit. She looked as lost in thought as I felt. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave me a small, sympathetic smile. I smiled back. An hour later, she got up to leave. As she walked past my chair, she paused and said, "Rough vacation?" I must have looked as miserable as I felt. I laughed and said something like that. She introduced herself as Sarah, a marine biologist from Portland. She was in Maui for a conference that had just ended and had decided to stay a few extra days alone. The woman at the front desk looked at my reservation and frowned slightly. She asked if the rest of my party would be arriving later. I told her it would just be me. She nodded professionally and handed me 2 key cards for the ocean view suite. The room was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific, a massive king bed, a separate living area, a bathroom with a soaking tub. It was meant for a family celebration. Now it was just mine. We talked for 3 hours that morning, first by the pool, then over breakfast at the resort restaurant, then walking along the beach. There was something easy about talking to a stranger who had no history with me. No expectations, no preconceived notions. I told her about the airport incident. She listened without judgment. Her perspective shifted something in me. She helped me see that what happened at the airport was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of 32 years of patterns. Being the responsible one, being the giver, being taken for granted. Always trying to earn love that should have been freely given. On the 3rd day, Sarah and I went snorkeling at Molokini Crater. We took a boat tour with about 20 other tourists. The water was crystal clear, and we saw tropical fish in colors I did not know existed. Underwater, everything was quiet and peaceful. For a few hours, I forgot about my family entirely. On the boat ride back to shore, my phone regained signal. It had been off for most of the snorkeling trip. When I turned it back on, I saw an email notification from an address I did not immediately recognize. The sender was Patricia Caldwell, my aunt, my father's older sister who lived in Boston. I opened the email, and my stomach dropped. Patricia had seen Amanda's social media posts. Apparently, my sister had been busy painting herself as the victim, posting long paragraphs about her terrible brother who abandoned the family at the airport, who ruined their dream vacation, who was selfish and cruel. Patricia said she had never known me to be that kind of person and wanted to hear my side of the story. But that was not the part that made my hands shake. The second half of the email contained screenshots. Screenshots of a family group chat that I had never been part of. A chat that included my parents, Amanda, Patricia, my Uncle David, my Aunt Helen, and several cousins. Messages going back years. In the screenshots, my parents were telling the extended family that I was the financial burden, that they constantly had to bail me out, that Amanda was the successful, independent one with a thriving marketing career. Message after message, year after year, painting a completely false picture of our lives. There were messages from 2 years ago when I had actually lent my parents $8,000 because my father lost his job for 3 months. In the family chat, they told everyone that I had borrowed money from them for a failed business venture. There were messages about Amanda's supposed career successes, complete with fabricated details about clients and projects. The truth was, she had been unemployed for most of the past 5 years. Patricia's email ended with an apology. She said she was sorry for believing the lies, that she wanted to hear the truth from me, and that she suspected other family members had been misled as well. She included her phone number and asked me to call when I was ready. I sat on the boat in shock, the sun beating down, the ocean spray misting my face. Sarah noticed my expression and asked what was wrong. I handed her my phone. She read the email, her eyes widening. She said one word: "Wow." We did not talk much on the drive back to the resort. I needed time to process. This was not just about the airport or the Hawaii trip. This was about years of systematic lying. My parents had constructed an alternate reality for the extended family, one where I was the problem and Amanda was the golden child. And I had no idea it was happening. That night I sat on my balcony and went through everything on my phone and laptop: old text messages, old emails, photos. I started building a timeline. Sarah sat with me, helping me organize the information, offering perspective when I got too emotional to think clearly. I found text exchanges with my mother from 2 years ago, right around the time I lent them that $8,000. She had been so grateful, promising to pay me back within 6 months. They never did. But in the family chat, they told everyone I was the one in debt to them. I pulled up my bank statements. 12 years of transactions. Thousands of dollars to Amanda. Thousands to my parents. Money for emergencies that were not really emergencies. Money for opportunities that never materialized. Money that was never repaid. Over $40,000. Gone. I found Amanda's Venmo account. It was public, and I had never thought to look at it before. Transaction after transaction from my parents. $50 here, $200 there, $500 for rent, $300 for car insurance. All while she claimed to be independent and self-sufficient. On the 5th day in Maui, I called Patricia. We talked for 3 hours. She filled in more gaps. She told me about family gatherings I had skipped over the years because of work or other commitments. At those gatherings, my parents would tell stories about me that were completely untrue. They made me sound irresponsible, flaky, always needing help. They made Amanda sound ambitious and driven. Patricia said she always felt something was off, but she had no reason to doubt her own brother until she saw Amanda's social media meltdown about the airport. That finally made her question the narrative. She started asking other family members what they knew. The stories did not add up, so she reached out to me. Then Patricia told me something that made my blood turn cold. My grandmother, my father's mother, had passed away 8 years ago. In her will, she left an inheritance to be split evenly between me and Amanda, $50,000 each. My parents were the executors of the estate. They told me my share had been used for my college expenses, that Grandma had wanted it that way. I believed them. I was 24, just starting my career, and I trusted my parents completely. Patricia still had copies of the actual will and the bank transfer records. Grandma's instructions were crystal clear. The money was to go directly to me and Amanda when we each turned 25, no strings attached. It was not supposed to touch college expenses or anything else. It was meant to help us start our adult lives. Patricia sent me the documents. I opened them on my laptop. There it was, in black and white. $50,000 transferred to an account in my name that I had never known existed. And then, 3 months later, $50,000 transferred out to pay off Amanda's credit card debt and buy her a used Honda Accord. My parents had forged my signature on the transfer authorization. I never saw a penny of my inheritance. I could barely breathe. Sarah put her hand on my shoulder. She asked if I was okay. I was not okay. This was not just favoritism or poor parenting. This was fraud. This was theft. This was calculated, deliberate, criminal. I spent the rest of the evening going deeper. I found an old email folder I had not looked at in years. Buried in hundreds of messages was one that had been forwarded to me by accident. It was from 4 years ago. The subject line was E-situation, which I now realized meant Elton's situation. The email was a thread between my parents and Amanda. They were discussing how to get me to pay for Amanda's latest failed business idea, a boutique clothing store she wanted to open. The language was chilling, strategic, calculating. My mother wrote about how I was a people pleaser, how guilt would motivate me, how they just needed to frame it right. My father added that they had raised me to prioritize family, so I would not say no. Amanda's response was the worst. She wrote, "He's so desperate for your approval. This will be easy. Just make him feel like a hero, and he'll hand over the money." The email was dated 3 days after a family dinner, where they had made me feel special for agreeing to help Amanda with her business plan. I had given her $5,000 for that store. It closed within 4 months. I sat there in that beautiful Hawaiian resort room, looking at evidence of years of manipulation, and I felt something break inside me. Not my spirit, my illusions, the fantasy that my family loved me, the belief that I mattered to them beyond what I could provide. It all shattered. Sarah did not try to comfort me with empty words. She just sat with me. Eventually, she said, "What do you want to do?" I did not have an answer yet, but I knew I could not go back to the way things were. That version of Elton, the one who accepted crumbs and called it love, was gone. I could barely sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those emails, my mother's words, my father's calculation, Amanda's contempt. By sunrise, I was back on the balcony with my laptop, going through everything again, making sure I had not misunderstood. Sarah knocked on my door at 7 with coffee and bagels from the resort cafe. She had given me space the night before, but now she was here, ready to help however I needed. We spread everything out on the coffee table, bank statements, email printouts, screenshots of the family chat Patricia had sent, the will documents, transfer records. It looked like a detective's evidence board. Sarah asked me to walk her through the timeline chronologically, so I did, starting 12 years ago when I was 20 and lent Amanda my first $1,000, tracking every loan, every gift, every time I helped with rent or car payments or insurance or business ventures, then cross-referencing what my parents told the family versus what actually happened. The pattern was unmistakable. Every time I helped someone financially, my parents would spin it in the family chat as them helping me. When I paid for my father's dental work after he lost his job, they told the family I had borrowed money from them for my own medical emergency. When I covered 3 months of Amanda's rent, they said she had lent me money to cover my bills. The truth was inverted, consistently and deliberately. Sarah, with her scientist's mind, started creating a spreadsheet. Column 1, what actually happened. Column 2, what my parents told the family. Column 3, financial impact on me. Column 4, documentation proof. By mid-morning, we had a comprehensive record of deception spanning over a decade. Around 11, my phone rang. It was Patricia calling back. She said she had been talking to my Uncle David, my father's younger brother who lived in Denver. David wanted to talk to me. He had his own suspicions about my parents' stories. Patricia gave me his number. I called David immediately. He picked up on the first ring. His voice was warm but serious. He told me he had stopped coming to family gatherings about 5 years ago because of how my parents treated me. He said watching them criticize me constantly while praising Amanda for doing nothing made him uncomfortable. He tried to say something once and my father cut him out for 6 months. So David kept his distance. He said he always knew I was the responsible one, the successful one, but my parents' narrative was so consistent that he sometimes doubted his own perceptions. Now, with Patricia sharing what she had learned, everything made sense. David said he had records too. My parents had borrowed money from him 3 years ago, claiming it was for my car accident expenses. I had never been in a car accident. He lent them $4,000, which they never repaid. We talked for over an hour. David said he would support me however I needed. He also mentioned that our Aunt Helen in Florida had been asking questions. She had apparently lent my parents money too, under false pretenses about me. The web of lies was far more extensive than I had imagined. After the call, I felt overwhelmed. Sarah suggested we get out of the resort, go somewhere beautiful, clear our heads. We drove up to Haleakala National Park to watch the sunset from the summit. The drive took us above the clouds. At 10,000 feet, we stood looking out over the crater as the sun painted the sky in impossible colors. Sarah said something I will never forget. The truth is like this view. It was always here, always real. You just had to get high enough to see it clearly. She was right. The manipulation had been happening my entire adult life. I just had not had the perspective to recognize it. On the drive back down the mountain, my phone regained signal. I had several missed calls from numbers I did not recognize, and one voicemail from my mother's number, which I had unblocked that morning. I played the voicemail on speaker so Sarah could hear. My mother's voice was not apologetic. It was angry. She said I was embarrassing the family on social media. I had not posted anything on social media. I checked my accounts. Nothing. Then I checked Amanda's Instagram. She had posted a long rant about me, calling me toxic, accusing me of abandoning the family, painting herself as the victim. Dozens of extended family members had commented, some supporting her, some asking questions. Then I saw that I had been tagged in a post by my cousin Jennifer, a lawyer in Chicago. Jennifer had posted a simple message: before you judge someone, make sure you have the full story. Families are complicated, and social media is not the place for truth. Several people had liked it. My cousin Matthew, a teacher in Austin, had commented, "Agreed. There are always two sides." I realized the family was splitting. Some believed Amanda's version, others were starting to question it, and my mother was panicking because the narrative was slipping out of her control. My mother's voice was not apologetic. It was angry. She said I was embarrassing the family on social media. I had not posted anything on social media. I checked my accounts. Nothing. Then I checked Amanda's Instagram. She had posted a long rant about me, calling me toxic, accusing me of abandoning the family, painting herself as the victim. Dozens of extended family members had commented, some supporting her, some asking questions. I did not respond to the voicemail. Instead, I made a decision. I posted something on my own social media for the first time in months. Just a simple message. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is distance from people who diminish you. Hawaii taught me that. Grateful for new perspectives. I included a photo Sarah had taken of me at the Haleakala summit, the sunset behind me, a genuine smile on my face. That night, back at the resort, I received 3 calls from my parents' number. I did not answer. They left voicemails. The first was my mother, still angry, demanding I take down my social media post. The second was my father, telling me I was making things worse. The third was Amanda, calling from their house, screaming into the phone. I listened to Amanda's voicemail on speaker. She was furious that I was trying to turn the family against her. She said I was a liar and a manipulator. She said I deserved that slap and worse. She said she would make sure everyone knew what kind of person I really was. Not once did she acknowledge anything she had done. Not once did she consider that maybe, just maybe, she was wrong. Within 2 hours, the post had over 100 likes and dozens of comments. Extended family members I had not heard from in years were reaching out. My cousin Jennifer called me directly. She said she had been suspicious of my parents' stories for a long time. She worked in family law and had seen too many cases of financial manipulation to ignore the red flags. She asked if I needed legal representation. I told her I might. On my last day in Maui, I sat on the beach with my laptop and composed an email. I sent it to Patricia, David, Jennifer, and Matthew. In it, I laid out everything. The loans that were never repaid, the inheritance that was stolen, the lies told to the family, the manipulation. I attached documentation for everything. Bank statements, emails, transfer records, screenshots. I told them I was not asking them to take sides. I was simply asking them to know the truth. Within hours, I got responses. Patricia was heartbroken and furious. David was not surprised but was still angry. Jennifer said I had grounds for legal action and offered again to help. Matthew said he had his own stories about my parents bad-mouthing him when he set boundaries. The support was overwhelming and unexpected. But I also got messages from family members who sided with my parents. Two of my aunts, both of whom were financially dependent on my parents for various reasons, sent me angry messages saying I was destroying the family. A cousin I barely knew accused me of being vindictive. The family was fracturing along lines of truth and loyalty, and it was painful to watch. Sarah and I had our last dinner in Maui, at a small restaurant overlooking the ocean. She was flying back to Portland the next day, and I was heading back to Seattle. We had only known each other for a week, but it felt like much longer. She had been a lifeline during the hardest week of my life. She asked me what I was going to do when I got home. I told her I did not know. Part of me wanted to pursue legal action to get my inheritance back. Part of me wanted to just walk away and never speak to my parents or Amanda again. Part of me still hoped for some kind of reconciliation, though I knew that was probably fantasy. Sarah said something wise. You don't have to decide everything right now. Take your time. Process. Heal. The truth is out there now. Let it do its work. We exchanged numbers and promised to stay in touch. I meant it. She had shown me what healthy boundaries looked like, what it meant to choose yourself. The flight back to Seattle felt different from the flight to Hawaii. I was not running away anymore. I was heading toward something, though I was not sure what. As the plane descended over Puget Sound, I looked out at the city lights below. Somewhere down there were my parents, probably angry and defensive. Somewhere down there was Amanda, probably planning her next move. And somewhere down there was the rest of my life, waiting for me to claim it. I had gone to Hawaii to celebrate family. What I got instead was clarity. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth more. I did not go back to my apartment when I landed in Seattle. I went straight to my friend Marcus's place in Ballard. Marcus and I had been roommates in college, and he had stayed a close friend over the years. I texted him from the airport, and he told me his guest room was mine for as long as I needed it. Marcus opened the door, took one look at my face, and said, "That bad, huh?" I gave him the short version while we ordered Thai food. His response was blunt and perfect. "Dude, your family is messed up. You should have done this years ago. Sometimes you need a friend who tells you the truth without sugarcoating it." I spent the first few days back in Seattle just decompressing. I went to work, kept my head down, avoided my apartment because I knew my parents had a key and might show up. My phone continued to blow up with messages from family members on both sides of the growing divide. I responded to the supportive ones and ignored the hostile ones. A week after I returned, I got a call from Jennifer. She had been reviewing all the documentation I sent her and consulted with a colleague who specialized in estate law. She said I had a solid case for recovering my inheritance, plus interest. She also said the statute of limitations had not run out on the fraud. If I wanted to pursue this legally, she would represent me pro bono. Family, she said, should not get away with stealing from family. I told her I would think about it. Part of me wanted justice. Part of me just wanted peace. I was not sure I could handle a protracted legal battle with my own parents. Then they forced my hand. On a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after the airport incident, I was in a meeting at work when security called my desk. My parents were in the lobby, demanding to see me. They had shown up at my workplace, caused a scene, and refused to leave until I came down. My boss, a woman named Diane who had always been supportive, told me to take whatever time I needed. I went down to the lobby, my heart pounding. My parents stood near the reception desk, looking angry and self-righteous. My mother's eyes were red, like she had been crying. My father's jaw was clenched. I told them we could not talk there. I suggested a coffee shop 2 blocks away, public and neutral. They agreed. We walked in tense silence. Once we were seated with coffee none of us would drink. My father started in. He said I had embarrassed the family. He said I was being childish and petty. He said I needed to apologize to Amanda and make things right. My mother added that I was tearing the family apart with my accusations. They both acted like I was the problem, like I had done something unforgivable by canceling those tickets and telling the truth. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder I had prepared. Inside were copies of everything: bank statements showing the loans, email printouts showing the manipulation, the will documents showing the inheritance theft, transfer records with forged signatures. I placed the folder on the table between us. I said, "Before we go any further, I need you to look at this." My father opened the folder. His face turned red as he flipped through the pages. My mother looked over his shoulder, her expression shifting from anger to something like fear. I explained, calmly and clearly, what I had discovered. The lies they had told the extended family, the money they had taken from me, the inheritance they had stolen, the manipulation that had been going on for over a decade. I laid it all out, giving them a chance to explain, to apologize, to make it right. My father's response was not what I hoped for. He said I had no right to go digging through private family matters. He said the inheritance money went to family needs, and I was part of the family, so it all evened out. He said the loans I gave were gifts, not loans, because that is what family does. I asked him about the forged signature on the transfer authorization. He had no answer. I asked him about telling the extended family that I borrowed money from them when the opposite was true. He said I was taking things out of context. My mother tried a different approach. She started crying, saying she could not believe I would be so cruel to my own mother, that she had sacrificed everything for me. I felt nothing. No guilt, no sympathy, just clarity. I said, "Where was your concern when Amanda slapped me in the airport?" Silence. I continued, "Where was your concern when you stole $50,000 from me?" More silence. I stood up to leave. My father said, "If you walk away now, you're walking away from this family forever." I looked at him and said, "I'm walking away from people who hurt me and lie about it. If that's what family means to you, then I'm okay with leaving." I left the coffee shop. They did not follow me. I walked back to my office, went into the bathroom, and cried for 10 minutes. Not because I was sad, because I was free. That evening, my phone rang. It was not a number I recognized. I answered cautiously. It was Amanda's boyfriend, Kyle. I had never met him, but Amanda had mentioned him a few times. He said he needed to talk to me about something important. We agreed to meet at a park near Green Lake the next day. Kyle turned out to be a decent guy in a bad situation. He was 29, worked in construction, and seemed genuinely confused about what was happening. He said Amanda had told him I was the problem in the family, that I was jealous of her success, that our parents constantly had to bail me out. But then he saw my social media post. He saw the comments from extended family. He started asking Amanda questions, and her answers did not add up. When he pressed her, she got defensive. When he asked to see proof of her marketing career, she could not provide any. He was starting to realize he had been lied to. I showed him the same folder I had shown my parents. He read through everything carefully. When he finished, he looked sick. He said, "She told me you were broke. She told me you lived off your parents. She told me she was paying their mortgage." I told him the truth. Amanda had never paid for anything. Our parents covered her expenses. I had been the one helping them financially. Kyle thanked me for being honest. He said he needed to think about his relationship with Amanda. We shook hands and parted ways. I felt bad for him. He was collateral damage in my family's dysfunction. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a notification. Amanda had posted on social media a long rant about toxic family members and how she was the victim of a smear campaign. But this time, Kyle commented publicly. He wrote, "Funny how you told me your brother was broke and your parents supported him. The bank records tell a different story." Amanda deleted the post within minutes. But screenshots live forever. Several cousins had already captured it and were sharing it in the extended family group chat that Patricia kept me updated on. The truth was spreading, and Amanda's credibility was crumbling. 3 days later, I received a certified letter at Marcus's apartment. It was from an attorney representing my parents. They were threatening to sue me for defamation and emotional distress. The letter claimed I had spread malicious lies about them, damaged their reputation, and caused them severe psychological harm. They demanded I issue a public apology and pay them $20,000 in damages. I read the letter twice, then called Jennifer. She read it over the phone and started laughing. "This is the stupidest legal threat I have ever seen," she said. "They are basically admitting the facts in their complaint. They are just claiming you should not have told anyone." She offered to represent me, not just for defense but for a counterclaim. She drafted a formal demand letter for the return of my inheritance, plus 12 years of interest, along with repayment of documented loans. The letter included every piece of evidence we had. It also included a warning. If my parents proceeded with their defamation suit, I would countersue for fraud, theft, forgery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Jennifer filed the letter with a civil court and had it served to my parents. She said we would wait for their response. Either they would drop their threat and negotiate, or we would go to trial. She was confident we would win. I felt powerful in a way I had never felt before. Not powerful like I was hurting them, powerful like I was standing up for myself, like I mattered, like I deserved justice. The next few weeks were tense. I moved back into my own apartment after changing the locks. I blocked my parents and Amanda on all platforms. I stayed in close contact with Patricia, David, and Jennifer. The extended family was fully split now. About 14 relatives believed me and supported my pursuit of justice. About 4 remained loyal to my parents, mostly out of financial dependence or misplaced family loyalty. Then I got a call from a Florida number I did not recognize. It was Aunt Helen, my father's youngest sister. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her at first. When she calmed down, she told me she had known about the manipulation for years but felt too guilty to say anything. Helen said she was present when my grandmother signed her will. She heard Grandma explicitly say the inheritance was for me and Amanda to use for our futures, not to be touched for anything else. She had suspected something was wrong when my parents told me the money went to college expenses, but she convinced herself it was none of her business. Helen offered to testify if the case went to court. She also revealed something else. My parents had borrowed $15,000 from her 2 years ago, claiming it was for my medical emergency. They said I had been in a serious car accident and needed surgery. They showed her fake hospital bills. She gave them the money. I had never been in an accident. I had never needed surgery. She still had copies of the fake bills they had shown her. They had fabricated documents to commit fraud, not just against me but against multiple family members. The depth of their deception was staggering. I thanked Helen for calling. She apologized over and over for not speaking up sooner. I told her I understood. Families are complicated. Loyalty runs deep. Sometimes it takes something dramatic to break through years of conditioning. With Helen's testimony and documentation, Jennifer said our case was ironclad. We had multiple witnesses, extensive paper trails, and evidence of systematic fraud. She filed an amended complaint, adding the medical emergency fraud to the list of charges. I waited for my parents to respond. I waited for them to realize they were cornered. I waited to see if they would finally acknowledge what they had done and try to make it right. But I was not holding my breath. My parents' attorney responded to Jennifer's filing 3 days later. They requested a settlement meeting. Jennifer warned me it might be a tactic, a way to see how serious I was, or to buy time. But she also said it might mean they were ready to negotiate. We agreed to meet. The meeting was set for a Wednesday afternoon at a neutral attorney's office in downtown Seattle. Jennifer and I arrived early. My parents and their attorney, a middle-aged man named Richard Pemberton, arrived exactly on time. We sat across from each other at a long conference table. My parents would not make eye contact with me. I waited for my parents to respond. I waited for them to realize they were cornered. I waited to see if they would finally acknowledge what they had done and try to make it right. But I was not holding my breath. The total came to approximately $87,000. My father's face went pale. My mother looked like she might faint. Richard asked for a private conference with his clients. They left the room for 20 minutes. When they returned, Richard made a counteroffer. They would return the inheritance amount, $50,000, but claimed they did not have records of the loans and therefore could not verify that debt. They refused to pay interest, claiming the inheritance was held in trust for family needs. Jennifer responded that the forged signature and fabricated hospital bills suggested otherwise. She reminded them that fraud charges carried criminal implications. We went back and forth for 2 hours. Finally, they agreed to return the full inheritance amount of $50,000 plus repayment of $20,000 in documented loans. $70,000 total. They refused to admit wrongdoing in writing and refused to make any public apologies. Jennifer advised me that pushing for more would mean a trial that could take years and cost me emotionally, even if I won financially. I made a decision. I accepted the settlement, not because I thought it was fair, but because I wanted to be done. I wanted my money back, and I wanted to move forward with my life. We signed the agreement that day. They had 30 days to make the payments. As we were packing up to leave, my father finally looked at me. He said, "You have destroyed this family." I looked back at him and said, "No, I just stopped letting you destroy me." We left separately. I walked out of that building feeling lighter than I had in years. Jennifer hugged me and said she was proud of me. We went to a nearby bar and had a drink to celebrate. She refused to let me pay for her legal work, saying that seeing justice done was payment enough. I promised to take her to the nicest dinner in Seattle once the money came through. Over the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding my life. I stayed in therapy, processing years of manipulation and learning to set healthy boundaries. I reconnected with extended family who had supported me. I made plans to visit Patricia in Boston and David in Denver, and I stayed in touch with Sarah. We talked on the phone twice a week, long conversations about everything and nothing. She was considering a job opportunity in Seattle with a marine research institute. We were taking things slow, but there was definitely something there. 28 days after the settlement, I received a wire transfer for $70,000. My parents had paid 1 day before the deadline. There was no note, no message, just the money. I stared at my bank account balance, feeling vindicated and sad at the same time. I called Patricia and told her. She cried happy tears. I called David and Jennifer and Marcus. They all celebrated with me. I posted one simple message on social media. Sometimes justice takes time, but it comes. Grateful for truth and the people who stand for it. Amanda did not comment. My parents did not respond. But I did not need them to. I had what I needed. I had my money back. I had my dignity. I had my truth. A week later, I used part of the money to book a trip. I invited Patricia, David, Helen, and Jennifer to join me for a long weekend in Victoria, British Columbia. My treat, a genuine thank you for standing by me. We stayed at a beautiful hotel on the harbor, ate amazing food, explored the city, and laughed together. Real family, the kind you choose, the kind that sees you and values you. On the last night of the trip, we had dinner at a restaurant overlooking the water. Patricia raised her glass and said, "To Elton, who taught us all what courage looks like." We toasted. I felt seen in a way I had never felt with my parents. Patricia told me something that night that I will never forget. She said, "Your grandmother would be so proud of you. She always said you had quiet strength. She knew you would need it someday." I asked what she meant. Patricia explained that Grandma had seen the favoritism, the way my parents treated Amanda differently, the way they took me for granted. That was why she left the inheritance instructions so specific. She wanted to make sure I had something that was just mine. Learning that my grandmother had seen me, had valued me, had tried to protect me even after her death, it broke something open in my heart. I cried right there at the dinner table. Not sad tears, healing tears. Returning to Seattle after the Victoria trip felt different. I was not the same person who had stood in that airport 3 months ago. I had been tested, betrayed, and broken open. But I had also been supported, validated, and made whole in new ways. My parents did not contact me after making the payment. Radio silence. Part of me wondered if they felt any remorse. Part of me knew they probably just felt humiliated that the truth had come out. Either way, it was not my problem anymore. 2 days later, I received a letter in the mail. Not certified, not legal, just a regular envelope with my mother's handwriting. Inside was a handwritten note. It was not an apology. It was a plea. She wrote about how family is supposed to forgive, how I was destroying relationships that had taken decades to build, how I was hurting people who loved me. Some people believed them. My Aunt Carol, who had always been close to my mother, sent me a long email calling me heartless. My cousin Brian, who barely knew me, posted something on social media about how younger generations did not understand family loyalty. It stung, even though I knew they did not have the full story. But more people saw through it. Patricia and David were relentless in sharing the truth with anyone who would listen. They did not do it to hurt my parents. They did it because they believed family members deserved to know the facts before choosing sides. My cousin Matthew, the teacher in Austin, shared his own story in the family group chat. He talked about how my parents had criticized him for years, told family members he was irresponsible, and spread rumors about him when he stopped attending every family gathering. His story validated mine, and showed that this pattern extended beyond just me. My cousin Jennifer, the lawyer, posted a carefully worded message on social media. She did not name anyone specifically, but she talked about financial abuse within families, how it often goes unrecognized because people assume family members have good intentions. She linked to resources about elder abuse and inheritance theft. The post got shared hundreds of times. The family was fracturing along lines of truth and denial. It was painful to watch relationships I had grown up with dissolve. But I also recognized that some of those relationships had never been real. They were based on a false narrative, on a version of me that my parents had invented. Then, Amanda made her move. She posted a long rant on Instagram, calling me toxic and abusive. She claimed I had always been jealous of her, that I had manipulated our parents, that I had stolen money from the family. She tagged me in the post, ensuring I would see it. My cousin Jennifer, the lawyer, posted a carefully worded message on social media. She did not name anyone specifically, but she talked about financial abuse within families, how it often goes unrecognized because people assume family members have good intentions. She linked to resources about elder abuse and inheritance theft. The post got shared hundreds of times. His comment got dozens of likes. Other people started commenting, asking questions, pointing out inconsistencies in Amanda's story. Within an hour, she deleted the post. But the damage to her credibility was done. Before I could even respond, Kyle, her ex-boyfriend, commented publicly. He wrote, "Interesting story, Amanda. Weird how it contradicts the bank records you refused to show me. Also weird how your brother supposedly stole money when the settlement your parents just paid him proves otherwise. The letter was manipulative, trying to make me feel guilty for holding them accountable. But it also revealed something important. They were panicking. The family they had controlled through fear and obligation was slipping away. People were asking questions they could not answer. I did not respond to the letter. I had said everything I needed to say in that coffee shop and in that settlement meeting. The rest was up to them. A week later, Jennifer called me. She had received a letter from my parents' attorney. They were threatening to sue me again, this time for defamation based on things extended family members had said in the group chat. The letter claimed I had orchestrated a smear campaign against them. Jennifer read the letter and laughed. "This is even dumber than the first one. They are threatening to sue you for things other people said. That's not how defamation works." She drafted a response pointing out the obvious legal flaws and reminding them that truth is an absolute defense to defamation. She added that if they continued with frivolous legal threats, we would pursue sanctions and additional damages for harassment. They never followed through with the lawsuit. It had been a bluff, a desperate attempt to scare me into silence. It did not work. 3 weeks after the Instagram incident, I got a call from a number I did not recognize. It was Amanda. My first instinct was to hang up, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered. Her voice was different. Quieter, less aggressive. She said she wanted to talk, just the two of us, No parents involved. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her for coffee. Public place. Daytime. I told Jennifer and Marcus where I was going just in case. Amanda looked different when I met her at the coffee shop in Fremont. Tired. Older. She had lost weight. She ordered a latte, and we sat in uncomfortable silence for a minute before she spoke. She did not apologize for the slap. She did not apologize for the lies. What she said was, "I don't know how to be in this family without being the favorite." It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. She talked about how our parents had always praised her for nothing, how they never expected her to succeed because they did not believe she could, how being the golden child was actually a cage because it meant she never had to grow up, never had to face consequences, never had to become a real adult. She said, "You got out. You built a life. I'm 28 and I have nothing. No career, no savings, no real relationships. Just our parents telling me I'm special while I fall apart." It was painful to hear, but it did not change what she had done. I told her I appreciated her honesty, but that honesty without accountability was just confession without change. I told her that if she wanted to rebuild any kind of relationship with me, she needed to take responsibility for her actions. The slap, the lies, the manipulation, all of it. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I don't know how," and I realized she was telling the truth. Our parents had raised her to be dependent, to be entitled, to believe she deserved things without earning them. They had crippled her in a different way than they had crippled me. I told her I could not fix her. That was work she had to do herself. I suggested therapy. I told her about the resources that had helped me. She listened but did not commit to anything. We finished our coffee and left. It was not reconciliation, but it was acknowledgement. And maybe that was a start, even if we never got further. That night I talked to Sarah on the phone for 2 hours. She had accepted the job in Seattle and was moving in 3 weeks. We talked about what it would be like to actually date in the same city, to build something real. I told her about the meeting with Amanda. She said, "You can be compassionate without being responsible for her healing. Remember that." I was learning. Slowly, painfully, but I was learning. 6 months passed. 6 months of therapy, boundary setting, and rebuilding. 6 months of learning to recognize manipulation and walk away from it. 6 months of choosing peace over approval. My parents sent a Christmas card. It arrived in early December, a generic holiday greeting with their signatures and a printed family photo from years ago, back when we all still pretended everything was fine. There was no personal note, no acknowledgement of anything that had happened. Just a card, as if the past year had been erased. I looked at it for a long time, then put it in a drawer. I did not respond. Not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. I had learned that some relationships cannot be salvaged, and trying only reopens wounds that need to stay closed. Sarah moved to Seattle in late September. We had been dating long distance for months, but having her in the same city changed everything. We took things slow, both of us aware of our complicated family histories, both of us committed to building something healthy. One Saturday in October, we drove up to the San Juan Islands for the weekend. As we sat on the beach watching the ferry cross the water, she asked me, "Do you regret how you handled everything with your family?" It was a question I had asked myself 100 times. I thought about it carefully before answering. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that my parents were the kind of people who would steal from their own son and lie about it for years. I regret that Amanda grew up believing she deserved everything without earning anything. I regret the family dinners we will never have, the holidays that will never be whole again. But do I regret standing up for myself? Do I regret demanding the truth? Do I regret choosing my own well-being over their comfort? No, I don't regret that at all. Sarah smiled and squeezed my hand. "That's growth," she said. In November, I got a message from Matthew, my cousin in Austin. He said he had started seeing a therapist to work through his own family issues. He thanked me for giving him the courage to set boundaries with our parents. He said watching me stand up for myself had shown him it was possible. I realized then that my story had ripples beyond just me. Other family members who had been hurt or diminished were finding their own voices. The truth I had spoken had given them permission to speak their truths too. Sarah smiled and squeezed my hand. "That's growth," she said. In November, I got a message from Matthew, my cousin in Austin. He said he had started seeing a therapist to work through his own family issues. He thanked me for giving him the courage to set boundaries with our parents. He said watching me stand up for myself had shown him it was possible. Jennifer helped me set up the fund legally. At the small launch event, I talked about my grandmother's quiet strength and her belief that education could change lives. I did not mention my parents or the stolen inheritance. I did not need to. The people who knew, knew. The scholarship would be her real legacy. Patricia called me on Thanksgiving. She said the family gathering that year was small, just her, David, Helen, and a few cousins. My parents had hosted their own separate dinner with Amanda and the relatives who still sided with them. The family was permanently split. Patricia sounded sad about it, but not regretful. "Sometimes," she said, "the truth costs relationships, but living a lie costs your soul." Christmas came. Sarah and I spent it with Marcus and a few other friends. We cooked dinner together, exchanged small gifts, and watched old movies. It was simple and perfect. No drama, no manipulation, no walking on eggshells. Just people who genuinely cared about each other choosing to spend time together. A year ago, I had been standing in an airport, my face stinging from a slap, my heart breaking as I canceled those tickets. I had felt alone, humiliated, unsure if I was doing the right thing. Now, I stood on a beach with a woman I loved, surrounded by chosen family who saw me and valued me, financially whole, emotionally healing. Sarah asked me what I was thinking about. I told her about the airport, about that moment when everything broke open. That slap, I said, was the beginning of my freedom. It forced me to see what I had been refusing to see for 32 years. She nodded. Sometimes the most painful moments become the most important ones, not because of the pain, but because of what we choose to do with it. I thought about that, about choice, about agency, about the difference between reacting and responding. I had spent my whole life reacting to my family's manipulation, trying to earn love that was always just out of reach. The airport was the first time I responded from a place of self-respect. We walked back to the resort as the sun climbed higher in the sky. I checked my phone and saw a notification. Amanda had sent me a message. Just 2 words. "I'm sorry." No explanation, no context. Just an apology. I showed Sarah. She asked what I was going to do. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to respond, to open a dialogue, to see if Amanda was genuinely changing. But I also knew that 2 words did not erase years of harm. Apologies without changed behavior were just words. I put my phone away. "Maybe someday," I told Sarah, "but not today. I'm not responsible for her healing timeline. I'm only responsible for mine." Sarah smiled and kissed me. We spent the rest of the day swimming and reading and being present. As I sat on the beach that afternoon, I reflected on everything I had learned. I used to think family meant accepting whatever treatment came my way. I thought love meant sacrifice without limit, forgiveness without accountability. I thought being a good son and brother meant making myself smaller so others could feel bigger. That day in the airport, when Amanda hit me and my parents took her side, something broke open inside me. Not just my heart, but my understanding of what I deserved. I learned that you cannot force people to value you, no matter how much you give or how hard you try. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who diminish you. I learned that real family does not keep score, but they also do not keep you small. They do not steal from you and call it sharing. They do not manipulate you and call it love. They do not hit you and call it justified. The family I have now, the one I chose, sees me clearly. Patricia with her fierce loyalty, David with his quiet support, Helen with her brave honesty, Jennifer with her brilliant advocacy, Marcus with his unwavering friendship, Sarah with her patient love. They are my real family now, and being seen, truly seen and valued for who I am rather than what I can provide, is worth more than a lifetime of conditional approval from people who only valued what I could give them. I paid $15,000 for a trip to Hawaii to celebrate family. What I got instead was my freedom, and that, I realized as I watched the waves roll in, was priceless. The sun was setting now, painting the ocean in shades of orange and purple. Sarah sat beside me, her hand in mine. My phone buzzed with a message from Jennifer, sharing a funny meme about setting boundaries. I smiled and responded, then put the phone away. I thought about the scholarship fund, about the students it would help. I thought about Matthew finding his voice. I thought about the extended family members who were learning to question narratives instead of accepting them. I thought about Amanda's two-word apology and wondered if she would do the work to back it up. But mostly, I thought about myself, about the quiet strength my grandmother had seen in me, about the journey from that airport gate to this beach, about learning that I was worth fighting for, even when the fight was against the people who were supposed to love me most. Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about now?" she asked. I smiled. "I'm thinking about how far I have come, and how much further I still want to go. But this time, I'm going in the right direction." She kissed my cheek. "Yes, you are. But mostly, I thought about myself, about the quiet strength my grandmother had seen in me, about the journey from that airport gate to this beach, about learning that I was worth fighting for, even when the fight was against the people who were supposed to love me most." Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about now?" she asked. I smiled. "I'm thinking about how far I have come, and how much further I still want to go. But this time, I'm going in the right direction." The airport slap had been the catalyst, but the real journey was everything that came after. Learning to see clearly, learning to stand firm, learning to choose peace over approval, learning that love without respect is not really love at all. As we walked back to the resort, I felt lighter than I had in years, not because the pain was gone, but because I had learned to carry it differently, not as a burden of shame, but as a badge of survival. I had been tested, and I had not broken. I had been stolen from, and I had fought back. I had been manipulated, and I had found the truth. And in finding the truth, I had found myself. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? Have you ever stood up to people you loved and faced the consequences? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who is struggling with the same choice. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps others who need to hear this message find it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for more stories about real people facing real challenges and finding the courage to choose themselves. Share this story with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we all need permission to set boundaries, to demand respect, to walk away from situations that diminish us. Sometimes we need to know we are not alone in making hard choices. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that you are worth fighting for, that your truth matters, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the freedom to be seen and valued for exactly who you are. May you find the courage to stand up for yourself, the wisdom to recognize manipulation, and the peace that comes from choosing relationships that honor your worth. May you build a family, whether by blood or by choice, that sees you clearly and loves you fully. Take care of yourselves. You deserve it.